Have you ever wondered why two people with the same talent, the same education, and the same opportunities end up living completely different lives? What if the real difference is not luck, not intelligence, not even effort, but the quiet conversation you have with yourself every single day? Here is the truth most people never confront. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your thinking. The thoughts you repeat become beliefs. The beliefs you accept become decisions. And those decisions quietly shape your destiny long before anyone notices your results. Right now, pause for a moment. Ask yourself this. If your thoughts became your future, would you be excited or terrified? Because every breakthrough, every failure, every bold action begins first as a thought you chose to nurture or a thought you chose to ignore. Let me hook you with something uncomfortable. Your mind is always working for you or against you, but it never stays neutral. Every thought you allow is casting a vote for the person you are becoming. Every excuse strengthens a weaker identity. Every courageous thought builds a stronger one. You are voting all day long, and most people never realize an election is even happening. Think about a time you said, "I am just not that kind of person." Those words did not describe you. They programmed you. The moment you accept a label, your brain starts searching for evidence to prove it true. You stop seeing opportunities because your thinking told you they were not meant for you. But here is the shift that changes everything. You do not need to control the world. You only need to lead your thoughts. Leadership always starts inside. When you change the language in your head, you change the behavior in your life. Imagine two inner voices. One asks, "What if I fail?" The other asks, "What if this works?" Both feel logical, both sound reasonable. Yet one builds fear and the other builds possibility. The outcome is decided before you ever take action. Today is not about motivation. It is about responsibility. The moment you take responsibility for your thinking, you take ownership of your future. And once you see this, you cannot unsee it. So listen carefully now. The life you want is listening to how you think today. Choose thoughts that serve your values, not your fears. Practice them daily. Repetition creates belief. Belief creates behavior. And behavior creates a life that finally matches your potential. Starting today, decide deliberately, because your thoughts decide everything. Think about how this started for you. Nobody wakes up one day suddenly confident or suddenly defeated. It happens slowly, quietly through repetition. A thought repeated often enough stops feeling like a thought and starts feeling like truth. And once something feels true, you stop questioning it. As a child, you were not afraid to try. You did not say, "I am bad at this," before you began. You experimented. You learned by doing. Somewhere along the way, you learned a different habit. You learned to predict failure before effort. That habit did not come from reality. It came from stories you heard, comparisons you made, and conclusions you accepted without proof. Here is the dangerous part. Your brain's job is not to make you successful. Its job is to keep you safe. Safety means familiar. Even negative familiar feels safer than positive unknown. So when you think, "This is just how I am," your brain relaxes. No risk required, no growth demanded. But growth never lives inside comfort. Every meaningful achievement in history began with a thought that felt uncomfortable. Someone believed something before there was evidence. Someone acted before there was certainty. That belief did not come from facts. It came from identity. Let me explain this simply. You do not always do what you want. You do what you believe you are. If you believe you are disciplined, you act disciplined even when motivation disappears. If you believe you are unlucky, you unconsciously look for proof that confirms it. Your actions are loyal to your self-image, not your goals. This is why positive thinking alone is not enough. Repeating empty phrases without changing identity creates frustration. The key is alignment. Your thoughts must support the person you are becoming, not just the outcome you want. Consider someone who says, "I want success," but thinks, "I am not worthy." Their behavior will sabotage progress every time. Missed deadlines, half effort, self-doubt at critical moments. Not because they are weak, because their thinking is misaligned. Now flip it. Someone who thinks, "I am a learner," approaches failure differently. Failure becomes feedback, not a verdict. Mistakes become information, not shame. Same events, different thinking, completely different trajectory. Here is the truth most people avoid. You cannot outperform your identity for long. Eventually, you will fall back to what you believe you deserve. That is why lasting change starts with changing the story you tell yourself. Ask yourself this powerful question. Who am I practicing being with my thoughts today? Not who do I want to be someday, but who am I rehearsing right now? Because every thought is a rehearsal. When you understand this, you stop chasing motivation and start building identity. And once identity shifts, behavior follows naturally. Effort feels lighter. Discipline feels normal. Confidence stops being forced and starts being familiar. This is how transformation really begins, not with dramatic action, but with quiet, consistent, intentional thinking. Now let us go deeper, because thinking shapes more than confidence. It shapes direction. Most people do not fail because they lack ability. They fail because their thinking never gave their ability a destination. When your mind is unclear, your effort becomes scattered. When your mind is clear, even small actions compound into momentum. Think about why purpose matters. When you know why you are doing something, pain becomes meaningful. Sacrifice becomes temporary. Without why, even easy tasks feel heavy. This is why two people can do the same work, and one feels fulfilled while the other feels exhausted. Your thoughts are the birthplace of your why. They answer the question before it is ever asked. Is this worth it? If your thinking says no, your body will follow. If your thinking says yes, your body will endure more than you think possible. Here is a simple truth. Clarity creates courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is deciding that something matters more than fear. That decision always starts as a thought. Most people wait for confidence before they act. But confidence is a reward, not a requirement. Confidence is built after you keep promises to yourself. And those promises are born in thought long before they show up in behavior. Think about trust. You trust people who do what they say they will do. The same rule applies internally. Every time you think, I will try tomorrow and do nothing, you weaken self-trust. Every time you think, I will act now and follow through, you strengthen it. This is why small thoughts matter. Thinking, I will do 5 minutes, creates more identity change than thinking, I will do everything perfectly. Perfectionism is not high standards. It is fear wearing a respectable mask. Progress thinking sounds different. Says start before you are ready. Improve while you move. Learn while you struggle. These thoughts do not eliminate fear, they make fear irrelevant. Your environment will test your thinking. Doubt will show up dressed as realism. Criticism will sound like concern. Comfort will pretend to be wisdom. Without a clear inner narrative, you will mistake these voices for truth. So you must decide in advance who you listen to. The loudest voice should be your values, not your emotions. Values give direction when feelings fluctuate. When you align your thinking with your values, you gain something rare, consistency, and consistency over time is unstoppable. Not because you are extraordinary, but because your thinking finally points in one direction. This is where your future quietly but permanently begins. Now, let me tell you a story that reveals how this works in real life. There was a moment when someone stood at the edge of a decision that scared them. Nothing dramatic, no applause, just a quiet choice no one else would ever see. The thought was simple but heavy. Do I stay who I am, or do I become who I believe I could be? That moment is familiar to all of us. It shows up when you choose between comfort and growth, between the easy explanation and the hard responsibility. The mind immediately offers protection. It says, wait until you feel ready. Wait until conditions are perfect. Wait until someone else goes first. But readiness is not a feeling. It is a decision. And decisions are born from thinking. Here is what most people misunderstand. Your brain will always argue for the short term. It values energy conservation over long-term meaning. So when you feel resistance, it does not mean you are on the wrong path. Often, it means you are standing at the edge of growth. This is where intentional thinking becomes powerful. Instead of asking, how do I feel, you ask, what does this require of me? Feelings fluctuate. Requirements remain stable. Think about leadership for a moment. Real leadership is not about authority. It is about behavior under pressure. And behavior under pressure is guided by the thoughts you practice beforehand. You do not rise to the occasion. You fall to the level of your preparation. If you have practiced doubt, doubt will show up automatically. If you have practiced courage, courage will respond without needing permission. This is why discipline is misunderstood. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most. That choice is made in your head long before it appears in your calendar. Every time you think, I do not feel like it, and still act, you teach your brain a new lesson. You teach it that discomfort is survivable. You teach it that identity is flexible. Over time, resistance loses its authority. Here is the shift. Stop asking how to eliminate fear. Ask how to move forward with it. Fear is not the enemy. Avoidance is. The strongest people are not fearless. They are familiar with fear. They have thought through it so many times that it no longer controls the steering wheel. When you change your thinking from avoiding discomfort to using it as a signal, everything changes. Discomfort becomes information. It tells you this matters. It tells you growth is near. So the next time you hesitate, listen closely. Not to the fear, but to what the fear is pointing toward. That is where your future self is waiting. At this point, something important must be said clearly. Thinking is not magic. It does not replace action. It directs it. Without direction, action becomes noise. With direction, even small action becomes power. Most people overestimate what they can change in a day and underestimate what they can change in a year. Why? Because their thinking is obsessed with intensity instead of consistency. They want a breakthrough moment, not a breakthrough mindset. Let me reframe this. Your life is not shaped by your biggest decisions. It is shaped by your smallest repeated ones. And those repetitions always start as thoughts you barely notice. The thought to wake up or snooze. The thought to speak up or stay silent. The thought to try again or quit quietly. Here is the uncomfortable truth. You are already living proof of your past thinking. Your habits, your relationships, your confidence level. They are not accidents. They are evidence. Not of who you are permanently, but of what you've been practicing mentally. This is good news, even if it stings, because it means change is possible without permission from the outside world. You do not need more approval. You need better inner standards. Think about standards for a moment. Goals are things you aim for. Standards are things you live by. When your thinking is built around standards, behavior becomes automatic. You do not negotiate with yourself every day. You simply act in alignment. For example, thinking I will try to be consistent leaves room for excuses. Thinking I am the kind of person who shows up removes debate. Identity-based thinking simplifies decisions. Fewer arguments, less friction, more momentum. This is how high performers conserve energy. They do not rely on motivation, they rely on identity. They decide once, then execute daily. Now consider this. Every time you break a promise to yourself, your thinking adapts to protect you from discomfort. It says next time does not matter. Over time, this erodes self-respect, not loudly but quietly. But the reverse is also true. Every time you keep a small promise, your thinking upgrades. It says, I am someone who can be trusted. Confidence is not loud belief. It is quiet certainty built over time. So start smaller than your ego wants. Start with promises you cannot fail. 5 minutes, 1 page, 1 honest conversation. Small wins change the story you tell yourself. When your thinking shifts from dramatic transformation to daily alignment, pressure disappears. Progress becomes sustainable. And sustainable progress is what actually changes lives. You do not need to become someone new overnight. You need to think like the person you are becoming, then prove it with small, consistent action. That is how identity is built. Thought by thought, choice by choice, day by day. Now let us talk about the invisible influence shaping your thinking every single day. The people you listen to, the environments you tolerate, the information you consume. None of these are neutral. They're either reinforcing who you want to become or quietly pulling you back to who you used to be. Your mind absorbs patterns before it absorbs facts. If you are surrounded by cynicism, your thinking learns caution. If you are surrounded by possibility, your thinking learns courage. This is not about positivity. This is about alignment. Think about why some ideas feel heavy and others feel energizing. It is not because they are easier. It is because they match or conflict with your internal story. When your environment constantly contradicts the person you are trying to become, your thinking experiences friction. And friction over time drains momentum. This is why intentional distance matters. Not arrogance, not superiority. Distance. Sometimes growth requires stepping away from voices that knew an older version of you and are unconsciously invested in keeping you there. Here is the difficult part. Familiar voices feel safe even when they limit you. New thinking often feels lonely before it feels empowering. But loneliness is temporary. Regret lasts longer. Let me say this carefully. You do not need everyone to believe in you. You need your thinking to stop borrowing doubt from others. When you internalize external skepticism, you begin fighting battles that were never yours. Strong thinking has boundaries. It decides what gets access. It filters feedback. It asks, does this help me grow, or does it help someone else stay comfortable? Notice how often people project their fears disguised as advice. Be realistic. Do not take risks. Stay where it is safe. These phrases sound wise, but they often come from unresolved fear, not insight. You must learn to separate concern from limitation. Concern asks questions. Limitation gives conclusions. Concern invites growth. Limitation shuts it down. Your thinking should be curious, not defensive. Curiosity expands capacity. Defensiveness protects ego. One leads to learning, the other leads to stagnation. Now here is the empowering truth. You get to choose what you repeatedly expose your mind to, what you read, what you watch, what conversations you replay. Repetition creates normalization, and what feels normal eventually feels possible. If you want different results, audit your inputs, not once, consistently, because your thinking is being trained every day, whether you notice or not. This is not about cutting people off dramatically. It is about turning the volume down on what weakens you and turning it up on what strengthens you. When your environment supports your thinking, discipline requires less effort. Focus lasts longer. Doubt loses its grip. You are not fragile, but your thinking is impressionable. Protect it with intention. Feed it with purpose, and it will begin to work for you instead of against you. There will be moments when, despite all this, your thinking still wavers. Doubt will return. Old patterns will knock on the door. This does not mean you are failing. It means you are human. The difference now is awareness. Awareness gives you choice. Without it, thoughts feel like facts. With it, thoughts become options. You can observe them without obeying them. Think of your mind like a courtroom. A thought appears as a claim. Most people accept the claim without evidence. Strong thinkers ask for proof. Is this always true? Where did this belief come from? Who benefits if I accept it? This is not overthinking. This is leadership. You are leading your mind instead of being led by it. Consider how often you think in absolutes. Always. Never everyone. No one. These words feel convincing, but they are rarely accurate. They collapse complexity into limitation. When you challenge absolutes, your thinking regains flexibility. Here is a practical shift. Replace judgment with curiosity. Instead of thinking, I failed, think, what did this teach me? Instead of, I am not good enough, think, what skill needs development? This does not deny reality, it refines it. Resilient thinking is not blind optimism. It is honest interpretation. It acknowledges difficulty without assigning identity to it. You are not your struggle. You are the one learning through it. Let us talk about inner dialogue. You are always speaking to yourself. The question is whether the voice is helpful or harmful. You would never speak to someone you care about the way many people speak to themselves. Yet you live inside this conversation every day. Change begins when your inner voice becomes a coach instead of a critic. A critic points out flaws without solutions. A coach acknowledges mistakes and directs improvement. When you think like a coach, mistakes become part of the process, not a reason to quit. Feedback becomes data, not a personal attack. Progress accelerates. Now understand this. Your brain believes what you repeatedly explain to it. If you explain failure as proof of inadequacy, it learns helplessness. If you explain failure as a step in learning, it builds resilience. This is not pretending, this is framing, and framing determines emotional response. Emotional response determines behavior. So the next time doubt appears, do not fight it aggressively. Observe it calmly. Question it respectfully. Redirect it intentionally. You are not trying to eliminate negative thoughts. You are training yourself not to be controlled by them. This is mastery, quiet, unseen, powerful. When you develop this level of thinking, setbacks lose their power to define you. They become moments, not identities. And once you stop identifying with doubt, confidence stops being something you chase. It becomes something you return to again and again. As your thinking strengthens, something subtle but powerful begins to happen. You stop reacting and start responding. Life still brings pressure, deadlines, uncertainty, and disappointment, but your inner state becomes steadier. Not because the world is easier, but because you are clearer. Clarity is underrated. It is not loud. It does not announce itself. It simply removes noise. When your thinking is clear, decisions feel lighter. You stop asking everyone for permission. You stop over-explaining your choices. You move with quiet confidence. This is where values take center stage. Values are not what you say you believe. They are what guide your behavior when no one is watching. And values are reinforced through thought long before they show up in action. Ask yourself this. When things get hard, what do I default to? Do I default to excuses or ownership? Do I default to fear or learning? Those defaults reveal your values in practice, not theory. Strong thinking is values-based, not mood-based. Moods change, values endure. When you think from values, you do not need to feel motivated to do the right thing. You do it because it aligns with who you are. This is why purpose-driven people appear calm under pressure. They are not calmer by nature. They are clearer in direction. When you know what matters, distractions lose power. Here is an important distinction. Urgency feels important. Importance feels calm. Urgency rushes. Importance prioritizes. Your thinking determines which one you live by. Many people stay busy to avoid thinking deeply. Activity becomes a distraction from clarity. But movement without meaning leads to exhaustion. Meaning turns effort into fulfillment. When your thinking is anchored in purpose, saying no becomes easier. You no longer need to chase every opportunity because you are committed to a direction. Focus is not about doing more. It is about doing what matters. Now consider this. The world will reward speed, but life rewards alignment. Speed without alignment leads to burnout. Alignment creates sustainability. This is where patience enters. Patience is not waiting passively. It is acting consistently without immediate validation. It trusts the process because the thinking behind it is sound. You stop asking, is this working yet? And start asking, am I being consistent with my values? That shift removes anxiety. You measure success by integrity, not applause. Over time, results catch up. They always do. But by then, your confidence no longer depends on them. It is rooted in self-respect. This is the quiet power of disciplined thinking. It creates stability in an unstable world. It allows you to move forward without needing certainty. When your thoughts are aligned with your values, your actions gain weight, your words gain credibility, your presence gains trust. And trust, both in yourself and from others, becomes one of your greatest advantages. Eventually, your thinking reaches a point where you stop needing external validation to continue. Praise becomes pleasant, not necessary. Criticism becomes information, not identity. This is a powerful shift because it returns ownership of your life back to you. Most people give away control without realizing it. They let opinions decide their pace. They let comparisons decide their worth. They let outcomes decide their confidence. But when your thinking is grounded, none of these have final authority. Comparison is one of the most dangerous habits of thought. It looks harmless, even motivating at first. But comparison rarely shows the full picture. You see someone else's highlight and measure it against your behind the scenes. That math will never be fair. Strong thinking replaces comparison with commitment. It asks, am I better aligned today than I was yesterday? That is the only comparison that builds progress. Here is another truth. Not everyone will understand your path, especially when it is new. Understanding usually comes after results, not before. If you wait for agreement, you will delay growth. Your thinking must be strong enough to hold belief before evidence appears. This is not delusion. This is vision. Vision sees forward, not sideways. There will be seasons where effort feels invisible, where progress feels slow, where discipline feels unrewarded. In those moments, weak thinking says this is pointless. Strong thinking says this is preparation. Preparation is rarely glamorous. It is repetitive. It is quiet. It tests patience more than talent. But it is also where confidence is forged. Remember this. Momentum is created before it is felt. You do not feel strong and then act strong. You act strong long enough to feel it. Thinking leads, feeling follows. When setbacks happen, and they will, your interpretation matters more than the event. One interpretation says, this proves I should stop. Another says, this shows me what to adjust. Same situation, different future. This is why adaptability is a thinking skill, not a personality trait. People who grow are not those who never fail. They are those who revise without quitting. Let go of the need to be right. Choose instead to be effective. Being right protects ego. Being effective builds results. Your thinking should serve progress, not pride. As this mindset settles in, pressure changes. You stop putting all the weight on one moment, one conversation, one opportunity. You understand that consistency compounds. This removes desperation, and desperation clouds judgment. Calm thinking sees options that panic misses. When you trust your process, you stop rushing your growth. You respect timing without becoming passive. You move steadily, not anxiously. This is maturity of thought. It does not seek shortcuts. It builds foundations. And foundations, once set, support everything that comes next. And now we arrive at the most important realization of all. You do not become what you want. You become what you think about most, not occasionally, not when it is convenient, consistently. Your future is not built in moments of inspiration. It is built in moments of decision, small decisions, repeated daily, guided by thoughts you choose to keep or let go. Look back at where you started, the fears, the doubts, the limits you once accepted without question. They did not disappear because life changed. They lost power because your thinking did. This is the quiet victory. No applause, no announcement, just a steady alignment between you believe you are and how you show up in the world. You no longer wait to feel ready. You move because readiness is created by movement. You no longer wait for confidence. You build it through consistency. Understand this clearly. Your thoughts will never be perfect. Discipline is not about perfection, it is about direction. When your direction is clear, missteps become course corrections, not reasons to quit. Every day, you are practicing something, either fear or courage, either avoidance or responsibility, either growth or comfort. There is no neutral practice. The question is no longer, can I do this? The real question is, what am I choosing to rehearse with my thoughts? If you rehearse excuses, life will give you reasons. If you rehearse commitment, life will give you opportunities. Not immediately, not easily, but inevitably. This is how belief becomes embodied. You stop convincing yourself. You start proving it through action. And here is the final truth. You do not need to change everything. You only need to change what you think about consistently. One standard, one value, one promise at a time. When you do this, the noise fades, the fear quiets, the path simplifies. You begin to trust yourself, and self-trust is the foundation of everything meaningful. Without it, success feels empty. With it, even challenges feel purposeful. So as this ends, remember this. Guard your thoughts like you guard your time. Invest them deliberately. Repeat the ones that build you. Release the ones that shrink you. Your mind is not just a place where thoughts happen. It is the place where futures are built. Choose wisely, practice daily, and become exactly what you think about most. This is not motivation. This is responsibility. And responsibility is where real power begins.